Gianu, welcome to everyone to this, the very first ever episode of the Brown Munde podcast. My name is Harwinder Munde. I am going to be facilitating this podcast, but I'm also a contributor alongside my very good friends. How you doing?
Sahib, I'm very good, thank you.
We've got Sahib.
Good man. How's it going, everyone?
And then we've got Vijay.
What's going on, everyone? You all right?
So guys, let's have a little think. Why are we all doing a podcast? Because it's the in thing to do. It seems to be a bit of a fashionable trend, but this is something we've talked about for many years. And in my opinion, it's a little bit of a flow on from the circles that we all met in, where we used to talk a lot. And we used to talk a lot publicly, but through writing. Now podcasts are here. What's our thinking? What are we doing podcasting out today?
Go on, Sahib, you might as well lead this one.
Well, you kind of already said it, Harv. We've been having great conversations in our WhatsApp chats, but it's confined just to the WhatsApp conversation. And plenty of times, and I think most of us would probably agree, you find that you have interesting or similar conversations happen in different circles as well. And then you start thinking, hold up, we're having this conversation. Some of my other circles are sort of touching on similar things, different opinions for sure, but similar conversations. Why not put something out? Because it clearly is something that people are talking about, people find interesting. And I don't know, I think our opinions, even though, we're all friends and we have similar opinions, in many ways they're very different. So it makes sense. It makes sense to put it out there, because I think we can kind of talk for a large section and people will be able to reflect and see the same.
I'll be honest, for me, it's exactly what you're saying in terms of, in the WhatsApp chat, the ones that this particular group, we seem to have some deep discussions in there. And I always wondered, look, what would others think of this? But when I compare it to my other WhatsApp chats, like they're just complete jokes. No one's saying anything serious. So this is probably one of the rare WhatsApp groups that I've come across where people are actually, talking about hot topics. So it just made sense to make a podcast, and maybe people find it interesting.
Yeah, I think I've had similar to Sahib, where there's been a mixture of it touches on the surface in other WhatsApp groups or conversations, but doesn't delve deeper like how us guys probably do. And I think the reason for that is there's a lot of that in our community where we don't like to delve deeper once we start sort of pulling it back a little bit. And I think this is going to be a good chance for us to sort of open the curtains even more so, to try and sort of filter out what we really think is sort of going on within our community, and subjects that are almost sinful in our community to talk about.
Yeah, I think there's probably, for a lot of people who know us, who might be listening into this, will already be aware that it's not exactly like we're really overly concerned about what people think of our opinions, hence why we're so open and honest and brash about them. So do you guys think this will be a fun experiment even for us to kind of prove ourselves and like test our chops by putting our actual thoughts out there, rather than just being in a little writing space privately?
100% for me as well, because I guess from a personal space, and Harvey, you know this, I have been very outspoken to the extent where I'll put it out there. I will piss off I will piss off my own. Like, I've pissed off and I've come against family members I've been that outspoken, right? But, you sort of change. I've sort of gone away from that, and I started becoming a little bit quiet, because thinking, okay, maybe too aggro isn't the way forward. But I think this sort of medium is a sort of middle ground. You don't have to go full force and be out there, but I think this is a good way to inspire that sort of conversation without necessarily having to go a bit over the top like I have in the past, for example.
I think it's also really important as well that when there's like four guys like us that are it's evident that we're very good friends, but it's okay to have different opinions and still be friends, I think there's this stigma where like, it kind of like follow the leader, where like if you're in a group of friends and they have one way of thinking, then you don't want to be the outsider that has a different opinion on it. And I think this is a good way of sort of touching on subjects where we don't all agree, but hopefully that should sort of spark some sort of conversation within other friend groups, or just hear what other people have to think about it, because they might not have ever touched upon that subject with their peers the way we have.
Provoking conversation has got to be at the heart of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's what we do all the time ourselves, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. And for me personally, I've not ever been as outspoken as Sahib. Probably, maybe on.
Bob, I don't think any of us have been outspoken as
Yeah,
Sahib.
not like Sahib. Maybe I don't know. Maybe on Facebook and Twitter here and there, but not to the level where putting videos out. So yeah, respect to Sahib. He's been there, done that. So hopefully, yeah.
It's funny you say that, Vijay, because I always had you down as the most outspoken person I'd ever met 10 years ago.
I do, and again, I've tried to calm it down. The wife's calmed it down now, so.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah. Let's bring it back.
Yeah, it's definitely still a good space to be in to try and air some of our views. And obviously, with each episode, we'll be talking about something that's culturally relevant, not necessarily at that particular time, but something that's important to us and something we've seen out there that we think needs to be raised. There's no point in us coming together as Brown Munde and just doing standard gupshops. So hopefully, guys, we live up to this high mantle and we try and get it. We try and put something out there that we're proud of, which at the end of the day is what the standard we all hold ourselves to. And with that in mind, this first episode really can't talk about anything else if you're going to call yourselves Brown Munde other than the Punjabi Kisan Masala. But in us thinking about what we're going to do with this first podcast, one of the great things I found was that as opposed to all of the other conversations I've been having with most people about what's going on in Punjab, what the farmers' protest is all about, our conversations were very relevant to our lives. And rather than just talking about what can we do and look how bad it is and, lamenting as it were, we started talking about what it probably means for us and what we think it means for people like us who live out in the West or anywhere that's outside of Punjab, but who still care about this whole situation and what's happening and what's taking place. So with that in mind, what do you guys think is the real, what do you think is the real impact of the Punjab Kisan Masala, the whole protest, everything that's happened over the last 6 months? What is the impact of that on people who are of Punjabi background, who are born and raised in England? Let's just keep it local to start with. What do you think is the impact on them? Because we're all born and raised in England. Well, 3 of us are, 1 of us is a migrant, but we're you can come in after German, but if we're born and raised here in the West, but we're in England where we spend most of our time, what's that impact like? What is it doing? Is it bringing us closer to our roots? Is it actually making us think, wow, I'm so far removed from this? What is your take on it? What are you seeing happen amongst the people around you, but more importantly for yourselves?
I think it's been a good, obviously it's not been good with all that's been going on, but I think it's encouraged more, especially people of our generation, to maybe sort of dig a bit deeper with their roots, just because it's come to the sort of the national forefront in terms of news and across the world. So if they were to ever get approached by friends that are not Punjabi or not Indian at all, you don't want to be the guy that has no information to give back to them from your own culture, essentially. So I feel like it's done a good thing in that Upper they have really tried to take a little bit more pride in where they're from, just so they know they've got a bit of information to give back to people who don't understand what is going on or how it affects people in Punjab.
Yeah, and also
directly.
I think you can see that people that aren't necessarily always talking about things in the Punjabi culture, you don't always see posts of that nature on their Instagram. Suddenly, they're also interested in it, and there's a
Proper.
reason, because it's bringing people together for sure. Unfortunately, it's out of a negative, but the positive change out of that is, you know, people are coming together. You know, even myself in the beginning, I was saying, should I really post about it? What difference does it really make? You know, I'm just one person here. But then in the end, you feel strong enough about it, and it's not even that. Oh yeah, I'm Punjabi for doing it. That doesn't really matter about, you know. Oh, are you that Punjabi if you post or you don't post? But I think people have just felt deep down that they should do, and I think even to a certain extent, I think people are now trying to find new avenues, like, you know, maybe start reading and trying to work out how to speak Punjabi, trying to learn Punjabi, you know, trying to get more involved in it. So you can definitely see changes happening, which is a really good thing to come out of it. So
but then to go back to your point, Vijay, like I do feel as I feel like all four of us have been quite in touch with our roots, etc. But I did feel almost slightly sort of pushed out and slightly isolated, because I didn't post about it personally when it all kicked off properly, because I wanted to do my research. I wanted to know what I was talking about, and there is still, I think within our community there was a bit of pressure where I'm just gonna say it, but there was loads of people that I knew were reposting it but didn't have a Scooby. Half of these people didn't even know what the word Kisan meant before this even started. So I think,
to be honest, I think that's still the case now. I think there's a lot of people talking about it who still haven't clocked on that this is a much bigger deal than just 3 laws that have been passed. That there's a much bigger story at play here, right? So what was it that pushed you guys to actually make that jump and want to post? Because you both said that so far. You wanted, you know, something showed and you then want to post. What was it?
Mine was probably very different, because me and Vijay had this conversation when it first started, and you guys are all probably going to disagree.
Around the golf in the mud.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're literally rolling around the mud. But I didn't see it personally, and I think I spoke to Sahib about this. I didn't see it personally as a humanitarian issue from the beginning. From what I read, I constituted it as more of an economic issue that was going on. But then as it progressed, and you could see that, you know, democracy clearly wasn't being adhered by, and the police brutality, etc. It became more of a humanitarian issue as it prolonged and got further and further in. And that's when I started posting more, because then I had more knowledge of what was going on. But from what I could take at the beginning, I didn't think, not that it should have been reposted or anything. I had nothing against it, and I was always sort of supporting all the farmers that were out there, because I understood what they were going through in the sense where I'd read enough about it, and I thought it was awful what was happening with the bills, etc. But I felt like a lot of people that were posting and saying this is outrageous, blah blah blah, didn't even know what the bills were about, or didn't even understand how this was affecting farmers. But then as it got progressively worse, then I felt, no, I need to post about this, because this is turning into a massive humanitarian issue as well as economic and everything else surrounding it.
I think it was
like
a process
snowball.
as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, go for it.
No, I was saying it was the snowball effect. So you were going to say it's a process, right, Sahib?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think it's a process, because I think you can almost look at it as stages, and then it kind of touches on what Dav's saying with, you know, first of all, people look at it at different things and identify it differently. In the beginning, some people might have felt it at being a Sikh thing, you know, this is a Sikhi cause, and the ones who identified it as a Sikh cause were the ones who were posting about it because they identified it from a Sikh angle. Some, and I'm going to be open and honest about it, some people might have came in from a caste angle and thought this is a Jat cause, I'm Jat, I got to support it from that angle. But then I feel like over time that's changed. Over time that's changed now, because it kind of has become evident, because now that, okay, you know, you could argue, Sikhs are the ones that started it. Okay, it was the Jat community, quote unquote, because they are the farmers in the Punjab that started it. Yeah, they're the ones that are following. But then Haryana joins in, you know, so then it's no longer is a Sikhi thing. It's then now become a Kasani thing. And then it kind of forces people almost, you know, the wider Punjabi community to then actually look at it and be like, okay, it like even people that don't necessarily are interested or want to post or show support, it pushes you to show support because you know, if you're Punjabi,
you've got it. You
should be saying something. You know what I mean? It's forcing people.
I was waiting as you were saying that because it's a good point, but there was a lot of caste lines and all that stuff in the diaspora, in Punjab itself. Like, you know, Dalit communities were some of the first to go out, and they're not, you know, like they're not land owners. Most of them are land workers, but not land owners. And so this obviously has a knock-on effect to everyone. But I was waiting for the Sani in the group to say something and say,
literally, I was going to drop that, but I was like, no, this could end up going left field and it could end up being a cast podcast all of a sudden, but we'll leave that for another time. No, but my personal reasons for not really posting was sometimes I genuinely feel people jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, fully.
And you know what? This wasn't, it wasn't that I didn't care about it. I wanted to read more of a balanced view initially. So because of who I follow and who I know, everything that was being posted was just sort of one side. But I wanted to kind of know, okay, is it as bad as people are saying? You know, or have people been led down the wrong path? Perhaps they're not understanding. But, you know, as it got clearer and clearer, okay, it is a massive issue, and I completely understand it.
But then if you're going to use social media is about a numbers game, and you've got to get huge numbers out, even if it is just blindly retweeting and reposting things. Now that's one of the reasons I don't use social media, and I'm not on it. But what about the argument that if somebody is using social media and they just retweet things without thinking about it all the time, surely they should be retweeting on this account then too, on this happening? Like, if you're going to retweet about everything else that happened, every other fad, then you can't stay quiet on this one just because you're like, oh, this is our one, and what will people think about it? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the argument.
I try and stay out of these things as much as I can. Like, even the Black Lives Matter, I didn't really post about it. Literally, like, it went on for ages and it's still going on, and it is a massive issue. And I didn't post about it, not because I don't care, but it's more because I do my own reading. I understand, you know, what needs to be done, but sometimes just blindly posting on social media, it does raise awareness. I guess that's kind of a change that I've started to maybe come around to. Before, I didn't think, me reposting something will really matter that much. But sometimes, it can have an effect on certain people that, you know, may look at it and start researching into it a bit more. But I think
don't come around to it too quick. That's one of the other reasons I left. I really couldn't give a dog's about awareness. Now I know that's not going to go down too well because the whole world and their cousin got really excited that Rihanna tweeted about it. It's not that I'm against it, saying, they shouldn't tweet and blah blah blah. That's fine. It's all well and good, but I just don't see, you know, and that made a change. It didn't really make a change. Modi government has doubled down on what they're doing because that's not what the problem is. The problem isn't someone else is going to come fix your shit for you. This is a much deeper problem, and that's why, like you guys saying, you read about it is quite good to hear, because otherwise we've got people who just don't know what's actually going on, and just
people wait for it to come into popular culture. Like, that's what a lot of the Black Lives Matter thing is, for example. Similar, people tweet about it because it's popular culture. You know, some of their favorite celebrities talk about it, so then it's cool to talk about that topic. Same with like the farmers' protest. The minute Riri came on, you know, that's when it hit popular culture, and I saw a bunch of people started posting about the farmers' protest because it's entered popular culture. You know,
I would still slightly disagree with you, Sahib, because the difference is that with the Black Lives Matter thing, and this is me personally, I was a lot more educated in making a formulated opinion, because I was taught about it in A-level history, and I even did it in university as part of my degree. So it's something that's taught within the curriculum in terms of slavery and civil rights, etc., etc. So I think there's a lot more people well informed about the history of how Black people have been treated in the US. But that's still part of popular
culture, because it's you being taught that is part of the culture. It's
because it's history. It's the same as Windrush. It's because it's part of history that has happened within the United States and within Great Britain and within England. The difference is that what's going on in Punjab, we're just not, generally in Indian history, we're not taught it as much. And like Vijay said, you have to almost educate yourself. Like someone like Harvey, he's on another level, like of knowledge of Indian history, and then that's where it becomes harder. Like, but I agree with you, Sahib, in that I guess more people wanted to be interested since Rihanna tweeted, because she tweeted. They were like, "Rah, Rihanna's tweeted it. I'm Punjabi and I don't even tweet it. Maybe I should be getting behind this because this celebrity who's got nothing to do with Punjabi culture is tweeting about it. So it must be important." So I agree with that aspect, but to compare it with Black Lives Matter, I don't know. I would disagree, but yeah.
I think like Sahib's point is a good one, that there's a huge element of pop culture there. But like Dav said, the level of education is on a completely different level.
Yeah.
And even through pop culture, the way that Black people have been treated for centuries, and then predominantly through popular culture, you've seen it over the last century in music and videos and films.
Exactly.
Like it's a whole educational tool in itself. We still have more than half of our population who don't accept there might actually be something wrong here. And I'm not talking about Indian population, I'm talking about people in Punjab.
Yeah.
So true.
So half of them are still not even sure if there's anything wrong or not, and they're kind of edging the fence. But Sahib, like you're the most desi banda I know for sure, right? And you were raised in Balad, but you were raised in a mental state that was somewhere completely different. You were raised in the Bend, and your whole mannerisms, your behavior, and the fact that you don't give two what anyone says or does, that comes from Punjab, the same as the protesters. Do you see that same spirit now starting to emerge? Like where we're asking this question about what's the impact on people in the West? Do you see that from your vantage point? Because you hang around with loads of Desi people, your Punjabis tiered and better than all of ours. Do you see now some of the Balati coconuts? Like Dav was very kind to me there, but I'm just like a lot of Balati coconuts too. Do you see a lot of us starting to maybe now think I've got to really hone in and start working out what is this background? Where am I from?
Yeah, 100%. But I'm just the same like that as well. So I might be Desi, but Desi in the sense, history and in that backdrop doesn't come natural to just being Desi. You have to take an interest in it, because again, popular culture dictates being Desi is having chicken tikka, mixed grill and a pint and listening to Bhangra music, right? Like that's the definition of Desi now. So, just because people are recognized as Desi or I'm seen as Desi doesn't mean that you have, like Dav said, Scoobies about anything historical or what happens in Punjab, right? But
we only have to go back to uni when we did Bhangra. No one was doing Bhangra back then. And that was us being Desi Bande, but it was kind of like, what are these idiots doing dancing around in like freshies? Literally, it's like you dancing around. And now it's everyone wants to be a Bhangra dancer. Everyone wants to be in tune with that bit of Desiness in them. And even musically, like you look at the tunes that have been, no one wanted to listen to anything from Punjab back in when we were at uni. It was all like this,
and now everyone's bumping Kamar Garewal and starting to work out loads of these artists. But
it was just RDB back then, and now it's Musiala. Like
shout out RDB, shout out Untouchablesuk.com.
Untouchables music, Untouchables music,
This is a good moment to instigate, like pushing that question further. So how are people actually learning then? Sahib, you were quite forthright there saying, people are definitely, this is going to bring them in touch with their roots. Like, how are they doing it? Vijay, what are you seeing? Like, are people actually, how are they getting in touch with their roots now? What are they doing physically?
Vijay has, isn't it?
Well,
I feel like.
Do you know what? I'll be honest. Like, I sometimes ask myself, how Punjabi am I? But then when this type of masala comes along, you realize, or I realized, I'm not actually that in tune with the culture as much as I think I'm. Like, the way the farmers work, the way they sell their produce, the way the Munde works, the middleman, I had no idea. Yet, I go around saying I'm Punjabi, and like even in the WhatsApp group, I was talking to you guys about it. Like these, when we're talking about Punjabis, they're out there on the front line at the border doing that, and I was saying I don't even know if I could do that. To stand at the border and for days on end on a protest, like I would need to be in a hotel somewhere. I would need to be having showers in the morning, feeling relaxed. And these guys, that's like pure like Punjabi culture. There, just like the inner strength. That's not really us, but you try and hold on to it as much as you can. That's what I find is happening with us. Like, you try and hold on to it as much as you can, and this is just another, another aspect of it that you realize, actually, yeah, I need to learn a lot more. I need to learn a lot more about the culture.
No, but I think that's just sort of how we've been nurtured in this country. Like, we're all quite comfortable in where we live. We're comfortable because we've got a roof over our heads, etc. But when push comes to shove, like if Sahib went out on a protest and like, boys, listen, I need you guys there, the likelihood is us lot would be like, Jal, we're there. We're like, where do we meet you? And we'll do it, because if the cause is strong enough where, it affects someone directly, or your livelihood or whatever, I don't doubt there'd be another side to me that I never knew was there would come out.
Sahib, can I just use an example of the Munde Wembley protest? Am I allowed to say
I was
that?
just, you know what? It's so weird. I was just
say it.
thinking about that. When me and you we met up there and we were there.
So when Narendra Modi came to England and they hired out Wembley Stadium and they did the huge, great, giant protest, like, I don't go to protests and rallies, but this one I went to because there was a young girl here from Canada and she wanted to go to it and nobody else would accompany her. So someone buzzed me and said, yo, Singh, can you go? And I was like, okay, fine. Met up with her at a station. We got on the tube, went to Wembley, and I walk out and I saw like there's about 15 up on it there. There was a whole 2-3 busloads of Kashmiris. There's about 15 up on it. Yeah. And the first up on I see standing there holding this giant sign slating Modi is my man Sahib. I turned up incognito. I was wearing a weird ass, huge giant goal like the mullah. I had a giant hoodie over the top. I had glasses on. I tied my daddy up. And I was like, I don't really want to get recognized. And the first person I see like Sahib comes around, oh, yo! And then like I saw about 3 other people who all recognized me. But it was that thing, because Sahib will remember, the reason I'm raising it is there was no fear, even though there's like 15, 20 people there. And the Sikhs were on one end, the Kashmiris went to a whole other end of the Wembley Stadium for the protest. It was just all these Sikhs. And as all these people, Modi supporters obviously come out of the stadium to walk to the tube, they're all walking past us. And they were giving it large. They were trying to give it as loud as they could. Seriously did not give a shit. And Sahib's standing there in this whole crowd, shaking his like banner and shouting at him and pointing and stuff. And if Sahib remembers, I was one of the dumb idiots who was walking with them to the tube, trying to talk to them. So I was just randomly picking people coming out saying, yo, look, I don't want to fight. I don't want an argument. I just want to know, how can you back a guy who's like this? How can you do that? And I was just picking people to say that, see which one wants to have a decent argument. And very few of them did. The only one that did was Kulveer Rangar. He's like the mayor's advisor at the time, the London mayor's advisor. He's like a politician now, I think. But it's funny you say that, Sahib. Like, it's that whole spirit comes in. And as Dab said, everyone would jump in and have everyone's back. But it brings me back to that question. So how are we going to, that's a real inherent way. That's in your DNA that's coming out of people in the West, right? I think so anyway. Like, it's not just the tweets. People are feeling really strong about this. They're talking to their parents about it. How else do you see them growing from this though? Vijay, you said like, people are doing Punjabi classes now. You've turned all Sufi now with your nice topi and your dara. All you need is a lohi over the top and you can...
I haven't had a haircut for 8 weeks. We said we'd be clear and transparent on this. I haven't had a haircut for 2 months. That's what it is.
Bro, we all know you're trying to set up a dira. All you need is a lohi over the top now. And that's something.
And then I'm done.
There.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Well, hardly though, but you raised a good point, and it'll go back to what we discussed in the WhatsApp group earlier, is talking to your parents. I think that's the biggest thing since this protest has happened. There's been a lot more dialogue between our generation and our parents, and then all of a sudden you're digging deep and you're finding out what our parents went through. Although I personally have always sort of known, my dad's always talked about encounters with racism, etc., when he first came here and whatnot, but I guess that's what puts the fire in their belly a little bit more, because you know how bad our parents would have had it, and then sort of subconsciously you're like, actually we've encountered it, but it's just been a lot more sophisticated in how it's been put forward to us, and we've just not taken it as directly as they would have. What do you reckon, Vijay?
How extensive do you think these parents' conversations have been, Vijay?
For me, but I'll be honest, man, like my parents, they don't tend to watch too much TV. They're not on social media, so they were a little bit behind on it, and they're not even on like WhatsApp groups where people are posting stuff, you know, like the typical BBM, like chucking a TikTok video in there and another video and then another video. You know, that like my parents and like my mum and my dad, they're not in any of these groups. Even my family group, my dad removes himself out of it because he can't be bothered to see people talking away. Like, that's what he's like. So I haven't really spoken about it too much with my parents, maybe a little bit here and there.
But not just this though, Vijay, like just generally like their struggle with like being
so coming out of that,
in this community.
Coming out of that, literally on the weekend, I was just trying to work out like what my family history is, and I was just going through, like going back to probably over like 150 years ago, probably going back that far, like what's been happening in the family. So yeah, perhaps this has struck a chord in the sense that you want to know like more about your history. And yeah, I was speaking to my dad about it, speaking to my mum about her side. So yeah, those type of things, I wouldn't typically have those conversations. They don't normally always come up. But yeah, interestingly, it's just something that's come about recently.
It's probably
because I think I'm like Vijay. I don't think I'm that as informed as I think I am. Whereas like Sahib, when he did the whole like Inqilab channel and just generally speaking, Sahib and you have like tend to have way more sort of more educated opinions on these sorts of things, because you know more about the history and Punjabi culture, but just even sort of the history of Sikhi in general. I don't know if that changes it.
Maybe it's probably too much to ask that like people who are getting involved or interested now and it's piquing their interest, they're trying to find something further. It's too much to ask that they're going to all suddenly become amateur historians or economists or, you know, agriculturists and learn all those things. But yeah, you make a good point, Dav. Like Sebi, like his amount of reading was phenomenal, I thought, for a guy who otherwise we all just knew as like this, you know, like really aggressive guy in the Bhangra dance scene.
But we have Shanti's on this podcast. He's so quiet.
But it was like, no, Sahib, that's
change
Banda,
right? Bro.
But that's
got a mug of haldi in there. He's chilling.
Even Sahib, when you came off as this aggressive Banda, you were incredibly well read. And it's not necessarily that you actually were that aggressive Banda. That's just one part of you that people saw. But then, like I said, through the Inqilab channel and some of your videos, you start realizing, wow, this guy's actually reading loads and loads of material to back up what his thought process is. And you said it earlier, it's a process, right? So
100%, it's a process, but it's also it goes back to what Dav's saying. It also, family, parents have a huge impact. Like you guys know my dad, for example. I haven't got that from nowhere. Shout out. He was actually trying to come in earlier. I was like, yeah, bro, podcast style. Yeah, 1 second, bro. We'll get you in on a separate episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that comes from that, like having heated discussions with my old man and then him having that knowledge and him basically out talking me. So then you're like, yeah, I gotta get my game up, and you start researching yourself to even just have that discussion, to be on a level with your parents, to actually have a chat with them. So
that's you individually. Like you're that type of person that wants to know, like if you're getting in some sort of discussion, you want to know you've got the sort of the armor behind you to back up every point you give. But not everyone, most people, like let's be honest, like me and Vijay would just probably be like, oh, it doesn't affect me directly, just carry on with the everyday today. And now I think with this whole, you know, Kisan thing that's going on now, it's become more personal in that actually maybe I should know more about what is going on, where I come from, and how it affects not only farmers but how it also affects us living here.
So what outcome do you reckon we'll see out of this? Will we see like a rise in people trying to get in touch with their roots of Punjabiyat and it, you know, to some extent Sikhi maybe, but really what we're talking about here is their relationship with a geographical place? And
I reckon a big one, and I'm gonna point it out, Vijay, and I want you to talk about it, because me personally, I've seen such a change in Vijay's opinion and in his genuinely, man, in his stance. Like, come on, from Banda, he's like India cricket fan galore, to go to that, and you talk about it, to like go to that extent, to like delete his idols essentially, and you are developing a bit of
Virat Kohli, bro.
And but for real though, like, and you developed maybe not a, I wouldn't say you're Khalistani yet, but
What? Oh, bro, delete the podcast, please.
That's another subject, mate.
Sorry, thank you
as
very
in
much.
your
Thank
stance
you very
towards
much for
India
your
and
time.
everything has changed. But
Thank
as in
you
your
very much
stance,
for your time. We're gonna call an end to this before we get banned. And nah, sorry, Sahib, carry on.
but as in, no, I want Vijay to talk about it because that's what I feel like I've seen. Vijay's stance towards India has changed. Just generally, a lot of your political views about it, all Modi and all that, I feel like I've changed.
I've always hated Modi from the beginning. I've hated Modi. I personally think he's got away with a lot. For me, the reason why he's loved in this country because there's so many Gujaratis here, so many Hindu Gujaratis here. But I don't know any Punjabi banda that likes that guy. So in terms of Modi and the government, like I hate them. But in terms of India itself, like I've always loved India as a whole, and I've loved Punjab the most out of that. But it's because I've been all over. I've traveled and seen the south of India. I've seen Bombay, and every single part of India has great things. But unfortunately, negativity comes to the fore. And again, here negativity's come to the fore. What's changed, and what I've read up more on. So we've had so many debates about 1984, the lead up to 1984. In terms of who done what. And I would say my stance has probably shifted a little bit as to maybe, what the India government was doing. I've delved further into that, and I perhaps have shifted my opinion on that. I agree. But, again, with the celebrities as well, I was shocked that maybe not so much the Bollywood stars. The Bollywood stars are puppets anyway. But again, I've grown up watching Bollywood films. And then it just shocks you that someone like Sunny Deol, Harwinder, even some of our singers, to be honest, I think it wasn't Gurdas Mann was getting heat for it as well.
Yeah, at the beginning.
It shocks you that when it comes down, to the nitty-gritty, these guys aren't there, and actually they're willing to just be the mouthpiece of the government and the type of government. That's what's really let me down. We know the type of government this is, and the fact that some of these cricketers who I thought were young, new generation, were more well-read, but at the end of the day, everyone is selfish to a certain degree because nobody wants to lose what they have and go against the grain and go against the majority. And so, my opinion on India hasn't changed because I still think in many ways it's a great country. It's given great things to the world. And I think it's got so many problems. That's a different podcast. But I'd say my stance on maybe the uprising in Punjab from the 70s, 80s has changed. And I'd say I'm starting to realize more how much minorities are oppressed. Whereas previously, I remember saying to you guys, and I know Sahib, you'd read about it more. Hob, obviously, you've done a lot of research on it. I used to always be of the opinion that I think Sikhs still have it good in India. They're still living, how they want to live. But I feel like this has shown me, there's quite a few people out there. When you look at Kangana and you look at people in the government who have come out and turned this into a religious thing against Sikhs, when actually it's not even a religious thing. It's a farmers' protest. And despite there being so many people from Haryana, from other states, UP, whatever, people have just turned it against Sikhs for some reason.
Well,
that's what I've found really difficult to understand. Why is it people doing that? Why are people attacking the minority?
This is still, that's still the depth of some of the things you just said is outside of the scope of what we're doing this podcast. But because there is a massive religious undertone to a lot of this, it doesn't mean it's about religion, but there's you can't deny that there is. But one of the other statements you made, I think that's where the word we used before about this being a process is very important, because like you said, India has given a lot to the world. Well, then if that's the case, you have to include Pakistan to that too, because that's what India was before that. It was India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. You got to include the whole territory. It wasn't India, right? India was born in 1947. So I think sometimes we're still balancing these things out and they're getting lost in the conversation. But that's why it's good for us to talk a little bit about how this is impacting people like us, born and raised in the West, how we think it's going to affect our thinking going forward. And I definitely, just some last comments from you all, rather than talking about ourselves and what impact it's had on us or how we're going to take it forward, think of the friends you talk to in other circles, WhatsApp circles, your family, your distant family, people you've seen born and raised in England and who normally don't really have much interest. What do you guys see for them being the impact of the Punjab Kisan protest?
I hope it's a positive one, because the thing is, obviously this is probably more for another podcast, but I think the history of India and migrants in general has always, especially from India, has always been almost to try and please people from a British background. We've always tried to please the Englishman, and that's just been in our psyche from the British Empire, the East India Company days, all the way through. And my fear is that people now, Apne Bande in general, some will still feel, well, it's not affecting us directly, so therefore why do I need to still know about this? Whereas I guess if I'm going to compare back to something like Black Lives Matter, there's always mates that that have suffered racism or indirect racism, and then it becomes an issue, and then you sort of see it more as a direct cause of action. Whereas for us, I wouldn't say it's as direct, but it is direct in terms of our community and what it's doing to family members, etc., etc. But I hope it still sparks.
It's still very far removed for us because it's
so
far away.
Yeah, it is. But I hope there's more to it that ignites that, like Vijay, like who sort of decides, actually maybe I should learn a little bit more, and then the opinion sort of shifts, even if it's just a little bit. It does always, like, just tipping the scale slightly always makes a massive difference. Massive difference. I don't know what you lot think, but that's my opinion on it. I hope it does make a big difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how much of a difference it will make. Especially in the West, I feel like once it dies down, then you tend to find people go back to status quo, and maybe people won't pick it up in the same way. I think for me, I just hope the right thing comes out of it. Obviously, for the Kisans, that's the main thing that all of us want. But as the long-term impact for people like us in the West, I'm not 100% sure whether it's going to affect so many people. I don't know. I feel like we're shifting away, further and further away from like our Punjabi culture anyway. This might rein us back a little bit, but whether there'll be a long-term impact, I don't really.
But don't you think social media will probably help it? Because let's be honest, if this had happened 10 years ago, we would not have a clue that it's actually going on.
No. So social media's helped, but I think sometimes with social media, it's so short term. It's literally like, let me retweet this, let me like this, let me chuck this out there, let me chuck that out there. Then the next big story comes along and we're retweeting, chucking that out there.
It's
and
trend culture,
gone.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's gone. And I've fallen foul of that. I've done that here and there in the past. That's why I'm not 100% sure how much do you want it? How much do you actually want to be attached to your culture? And like I said earlier, even though I think, I'm Punjabi, but there are many things that make me probably very different to the average Punjabi bloke in Punjab, but that's just where you grow up ultimately, right?
I think a big deal is going to be when lockdown ends here in the UK and we start seeing people going out a little bit more. By the time we hit summer, maybe there'll be a few weddings or a few functions. And you see, couples getting married, so people go out there that weekend. Watch, they ain't gonna be they aren't gonna be tweeting about it, or they're not gonna keep up with it until the party's over. That's what's happened. I think pandemic lockdown has been a boost for social media. So Sahib, I'll give you the last word. What are you saying? What do you think?
Everything that everyone else has said, to be honest. The only other thing that I would probably say, and this is something that I've noticed with others, not just partly myself, but also others, I think the farmers have set an example where it fills you with pride to be either a Sikh or Punjabi. And that has then reflected in people where they're now trying to do the research. And even I feel like I know for a fact some people have actually gotten closer with Sikhi from this, looking at the farmers, just little things, the acts of kindness that have happened, learning some of that spirit. and taking away that, I feel like has had just an emotional impact on people. And I feel like, yeah, fair enough, this trend might go over, but some of those emotional impacts, like that Chardi Kala concept, or like, you know, how they were giving langar, those images will stay with people when they were giving langar whilst getting beaten up and then feeding those same police officers. That sort of stuff will stay with people, I feel. And maybe, yeah, it will be the next trend where they'll focus on, but on their personal lives, that will have an impact on either their own spiritual journey or how they look at the world differently. Maybe, yeah, it won't be fixated on Punjab necessarily, but they'll apply some of those principles that we've been able to witness that they've done on their own life. I don't know. Yeah, that's happened to me in a way.
Sahib ended that on a deep level, you know, like Banda went deep.
I was about to just go off on a whole nother topic of it as well.
There's nothing quite like there's nothing quite like gaining pride from other people's achievements that you identify with to give you a boost in life, right? Yeah. That sounds like really weak, but it's not, because you all need a push. And when somebody else achieves something like the Punjab Kisans are, makes you realize, like, man, we're really settling for less here, aren't we? When we say we can't do this, we can't do that. Those mans are standing in front of water cannons. And like Sahib says, they get up in the morning and wash their kasharid, wash and, you know, like soap themselves up and then put their kapre on, like back on again. And then they go and do it every single day.
But Harvey, that's because we've never seen it. Let's be honest, like half of us Englandis have only ever seen Botala and like Sikh Gaddiyan like in music videos. No one's ever seen what actual like Sikhi principles or anything of the sort has been like in action in real life. Now you only ever see it in films represented by bloody like Vijay saying Sunny Deol or whoever. Whereas now you're seeing it like real people going through it. You're like, actually,
100% as well. What Sahib's saying about the pride thing, but then I try and be a little bit careful with it. But when you see them and you realize these are our Bunde, like standing there, like look at how they're going full throttle and not letting go of what they think is right. Like it's immense. But the only thing that sometimes I'm just like, what should I be that proud of, like being Punjabi? But yeah, it's a difficult one. When you're Punjabi, it's just kind of ingrained in you to be.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily. It's not pride as such. Like pride in a bad way. That's like, it's more having I can't explain.
We've got a topic for another day right there. Basically, Vijay said our Bunde. What does it mean to talk about our Bunde? And we've got a podcast here calling ourselves Brown Munde. So what is that? What is that inclusive of? What is it all about labels? Of? How many kundiya mucha do you need to have to be a Brown Munda, or what's the deal, right? But anyway, it's been a fun time conversing with you guys. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again, episode 2 in a few weeks' time. And we'll be able to come together and talk about something else that's really like, you know, grinding us up and making us think that we've got to raise this up. I hope everybody listening enjoyed it so far and what you heard. And if you want to message us, just hit us up. The details will all be in the description with the podcast. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll say Fateh out. Everyone say your peace out, and away we go.
Take it easy, everyone.
See you later.
Peace.